tell me about 280 North and what you guys have been doing.
Sure. So there's three of us, three founders. We started up in January 2008. Two of us used to be ex-Apple. I worked on the original iPhone team. I wrote Safari, a little bit of maps, that sort of thing. One of my co-founders worked on the iTunes Music Store. He did all back-end stuff. So we've got kind of a very unique perspective on the web. We've worked on lots of different parts of the stack, everything from a server to the actual web rendering engine to obviously web apps. So we started in 2008 because we honestly believed that the web is ready for these kinds of applications, and that it's the right direction as well. So the very first thing we did was write 280 slides, and to be able to do that we wrote this framework called Cappuccino. And it's basically like this other framework called Cocoa, which is the way that you write Mac and iPhone apps today. So in the same way you write iPhone apps, the same way you write Mac apps, you can now use to write web apps. So we basically created a parallel framework for that. And as part of that, we also wanted to bring the very nice tools that we used to have on the Mac, like Interface Builder. So we built Atlas. So that's basically, we like to call it an application builder, not a UI builder, because it's not just about setting up widgets. It's about setting up actual application structure. You can create abstract objects and all that sort of thing.
And the actual application, you were initially having it as a web-based application. Now you've got a desktop app.
Right.
Why? How did that come?
So basically, it was just what people told us. Like we were really gung ho. Like we are web app people, and we love just shoveling our own dog food down our own throats, right? And we said we're going to do this. We're going to do it right. Web development IDE in the cloud. And that's also what people told us. Like this is not a new idea. A lot of people have kind of thought about this. And when we actually put it out there as something like, look, this is actually what we're working on. We're giving you a little sneak peek. The tremendous response was, yes, I love it. I don't know if I'm going to want to use it on your servers. And there were a lot of reasons. One of them is security. The companies just don't want to host their stuff on someone else's server. Another one was just like kind of little details. Like, I like using TextMate. I want to use your UI builder, but my text editor, right? Another one is I want to use Mercurial, not Git, right? So all these problems don't exist with a desktop app because you just double click a file, and then if you want to use something else to edit another file, you just double click it and open it with something else, right? Unfortunately, the web's not at a place today, and maybe I think it will in the future be in a place where you can share data like that, but it's not today. So what we said was, okay, this is one of those exceptions where this app really does make more sense on the desktop. So we are going to ship it as a desktop app, at least initially, right? Kind of the philosophy is, you're asking people to do a lot, right? We did all this stuff with web technologies, and additionally we're asking them to completely change their workflow by doing it on the web. We can scale back a little, say, you're doing all this web technology stuff, you're still doing it the way you used to, and then in the future, deploy it in a web way.
Okay, and you guys built a framework in quite a short amount of time, and you said
actually not in a short amount of time. No? So this actually started as a college project. So we all went to college together at USC, and at that point it was fairly academic, right? It was, I wonder if I can, write my favorite language and my second favorite language, right? So it was it was actually my research project my last year of school at USC, and we were basically saying, hey, the Cocoa frameworks, there's actually an open source implementation called GNU Step, which you can run on Linux. I wonder if we could take that same framework and make it run on the web, right? They're not that different. So we started working on it. And that was around 5 years ago. So there was a point in the middle where we didn't work on it at all, right? When we went to work at our jobs, obviously we didn't have time to do it. But basically we started this quite a while ago. This is like back when Safari was like 1.0. So like there were versions of Cappuccino that used to run on Safari 1 and like Firefox 1.5, believe it or not. And then we kind of put it off, and then we kind of felt that things were ready for this again, so we quit our jobs and started working on it full time.
Yeah, I was going to say, because 1 year for such a hard framework is...
So the one thing I will say is that it was easier in one regard. Like a lot of other people who write JavaScript frameworks, it's hard for two reasons. One, it's hard to implement a framework. Two, it's really hard to design a framework. But that's where we got to cheat. We didn't have to design it, right? We never have really big design questions. These questions have been answered and proven for the last 20 years with Cocoa and GNU Step.
And you've made it really, really easy for people to build apps which are easily rivaling anything that any of the big companies are pushing out, Microsoft or anything like that.
Right.
How do you think that's going to change what people are, what do you expect people to build with this?
I mean, at the end of the day, I just want people to build really beautiful, fantastic apps. Like, if you're coming from the Mac world, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. The Mac world is very different from the PC world in that you have lots of indie developers creating really great, fantastic programs out of passion that work really well, right? We have lots of different image editors, you know, not just Photoshop, and they all have this attention to detail, right? And part of the reason this exists is because they have a great development environment, and Apple, you know, keeps pushing really great tools for them, so they can focus on creating their ideas and not about writing boilerplate. And the web is the exact opposite today. The web is all about boilerplate today. The web is all about detecting browsers, about testing on multiple browsers, on getting it to work at a reasonable speed. And what most people do is not write, you know, most people don't write web applications. They experiment on the web. I like to say that I think that web developers would make great biologists because, you know, we both study really broken systems. So that's kind of what it is. Like, I remember, so, you know, we live in the Valley, and, you know, we stop by and eat with our friends at Google sometimes, and they have brilliant people there. And I find it personally hilarious because you have these really smart people, and what they're doing is trying to figure out how things to work well in IE, right? So basically you have this really awful product written by, I don't want to say it, but like, it's a terrible product, and then you hire the smartest people in the industry to just figure out what on earth is going on in that product. It shouldn't be that way. That intelligent person should be writing unique, creative things.
Yeah, that's. I think that's a very good standpoint. And what's you haven't released your product yet. And also, if you could also go into a little bit more about what it actually is as a framework, as a development environment.
Sure. So you can actually get a lot of this stuff and do a lot of stuff I showed today. So we have this framework called Cappuccino, right? And that's, you know, all its standard libraries and the UI toolkit and all that stuff. And on top of that, we have this thing called Atlas, which is the IDE. It manages your projects. It does a lot of the stuff that's kind of tedious, like compressing and your code and putting it all together and making sure it runs really fast when you deploy it, right? But if you want, today, you can actually go to the open source project, and we have an application called nib to sib. And what that actually allows you to do is use Apple's tools, Xcode and Interface Builder, write your interfaces with Interface Builder, and then convert them to the web. So we do have a completely open source alternative to Atlas that you can use today. So I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm good at going off tangents.
And what's the, you haven't released yet, so when are you releasing? How's all that working?
So we're releasing a public beta of Atlas November 15th. So, you know, we learned a really powerful lesson from our last experience at FOA when we kind of, you know, we shut ourselves in our rooms. We created this really big project that we thought, you know, people were going to love, and, you know, we obviously did a bit of market research. We asked people kind of what they wanted, and then we showed them this, and they were simultaneously in love and, you know, not liking certain aspects. That's why we really want to push on this beta really hard. We want people to write good apps, and we've actually already seeded it to some alpha testers. There are some apps out there already that have been built with Atlas and nib to sib tech. So we want people to get their hands on it, tell us, you know, what they like, what they don't like, so we can, you know, get the final version just right for people.
Okay, and you also said there's integrations for Java, for Rails. Oh,
right. So that's again, that is completely available today. Those independent communities have actually gone out and done this. So the Java one is very mature. As I was talking about, I'm not a Java developer, so if I butcher this, I'm sorry. I've never written a server in Java. But if I understand correctly, basically what it does is it takes all your Java model objects and automatically turns them into, you know, Cappuccino objects. So it manages the communication really well. The Lift community has actually, you know, been pushing really hard to work really well with Cappuccino, right? The Lift and Scala are two incredibly new technology. I don't know if they're new. I don't, you know, you always find out that a language was actually written 50 years ago and people are starting to like it. I don't know when they were invented, but they're certainly starting to take off today, and they're really cool languages. And they do the server-side stuff really well, and they basically want a really good front end. And, you know, they've been actively, you know, working with Cappuccino to have that be the front end. So we're really happy with that.
So lots and lots of integrations.
Yeah, and also Rails, and, you know, you name it, it's there. 280 Slides actually uses PHP currently, so.
And what's moving more onto the business side? What's your guys' business model? How are you guys planning on making money?
So we're gonna make Atlas, and we're gonna sell Atlas. So I know it's this crazy Web 3.0, right? It's charged for a product. But yeah, I mean, again, we come from the Mac world where people actually pay for things, and we believe that if you make something that's really good, people will want to pay for it, especially if it allows them to do something that they otherwise can't. And you know, most people have come up to us and said, you know, I will pay a lot of money for Atlas. So we're going to do exactly what they ask.
And you're doing that single product, monthly licensing?
No. It is a one-time license. At least Atlas 1.0 is going to ship just as a desktop executable. It'll run on Mac and Windows, and it will be just like any other desktop app you buy. You pay once, that's it. You own it forever. You know, obviously, if we come out with 2.0, there will be another price. So.
And are you going to have a hosted version at any point, or are you just going to...
So we are experimenting. As you may know, our original goal was to have a hosted version. So we did put a lot of work into that. So the plan, and someone else was actually asking me whether they could just buy the server code and run it in, you know, their own company, right? So our strategy is, let's get the desktop version out there. This is something people know how to use. Let's see what they like. And when we start getting feedback as, you know, I really wish I could have a hosted version, kind of like, you know, some other platforms, or I really want to just buy all the source code and run it in my company, then we will start exploring those options.
There's actually something we missed, hosting. How do you've currently got it running on App Engine automatically, just as you...
Right. So the version, 1.0 of Atlas is going to automatically support App Engine. So basically, it will manage, you know, putting your app together, you know, managing like, you know, download speed, all that stuff, and automatically putting it up on App Engine in, you know, the most efficient way, you know, all the performance stuff. So basically, and S3 too. So we're going to support those two technologies. So if you have an S3 key or an App Engine key, you just plug that in, and you know, you will write an app, you will click deploy, and the app will be live. That's not to say you can't use these other things like Lyft or whatever. If you use those technologies, then, you know, we will just bundle the app, and you will, you know, copy it onto your server and do whatever you want on your own. But what we really want is, you know, when I was working at Apple, you know, the iTunes Store has a lot of problems. But one thing that they got right with the App Store is that for the first time, developers could just develop, right? Everywhere, most other platforms, developers have to be marketers, they have to be, you know, credit card processors, they have to do all this stuff, right? What I really liked about the App Store is you can write an app, you can basically click a button, and it's live. And that's what we want to do with Atlas. You know, you write your app, so we've taken out all the hard parts of different browsers, desktop, web, I don't know what I'm doing, right? We've taken that part out. And we want to also provide the ability to just click one button, deploy, have it live. You know, later you can scale it however you want, but just the ability to get it out there the second you're done coding is really powerful, I think.
It's interesting you touched on payment processing and all this other good stuff that people have to do.
Right.
How much of that are you going to build in?
So right now we have no plans to do any of that. So we're not building an app store or anything like that, right?
What I meant was, how much are you going to allow, or are you going to pre-build in functionality for payment processing gateways and all that sort of stuff?
So I mean, we would love to. I honestly don't know enough about those problems to say whether we can provide, you know, just a plugin that does it for you magically or not.
Yeah.
If we can, we certainly would. Our goal is to take all these tedious things, and certainly credit card processing is one of them, right?
Yeah.
There's no creativity involved in that, right?
And compliance and
right.
sorts of horrible.
Right. So if we could do it, we definitely would. I wouldn't expect it in 1.0 just because at some point we really want to ship it. We can't fix every problem on the web, right? So the one
it can be absolutely perfect.
Right. It can be, but no one will ever see it, right? The one nice thing about Cappuccino is that, about Atlas, is that it is completely plugin based. Everything I showed today was actually one big plugin, the base Cappuccino plugin. Like Atlas alone does very little. Everything's loaded from the plugin. So people can come in and write their own plugins. So for example, if a credit card company wanted to provide, drag and drop, and all of a sudden your app accepts credit cards, they could do that. Or if an individual developer wanted to do that, post a plugin, now it's out there. So.
Okay, great. And where do people go to find out everything?
So if you want to find out about building these kinds of apps today, you can go to cappuccino.org, 2 P's and I guess 3 C's, cappuccino.org. We're the first hit on Google if you spell it correctly. Go to cappuccino.org. That's got, downloads of the stable versions. It's got links to the GitHub pages. It's got a lot of the open source tools that we've already released, like nip to save, that allows you to do this fancy drag and drop stuff. If you want to find out about Atlas, be reminded on November 15th when we release it. You can go to 280atlas.com. There's a slightly older demo up there. We'll put a newer one soon. Sign up. We'll send you an email when we're ready to ship this thing, and you can hit the webpage and buy it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.